everyone, my name is Kaylee Bates. I took a look at the Dominican Republic for this study. We are looking in this class about nonverbal communication, so metacommunication and kinesic communication and how those affect our business interactions. And so last semester, I took a class in cross-cultural leadership, and I studied the Dominican Republic throughout the course, so I saw it fit to continue that study and further deepen my knowledge in how business communications work between the United States and the Dominican Republic. So in this study, as I was looking it up, I found that up to 65% of our daily communication is found non-verbally. That's a lot when you think about that and how much we talk, and yet how that really less than half of our communication daily is actually verbal, but the majority of our communication is this nonverbal communication. So that shows the importance of that and how aware we need to be of that, especially when we are doing business between cultures, because there are so many differences between cultures, and we need to be sensitive to that, and we need to have a level of cultural intelligence as we go about our business. So some of the things that I found as far as the Dominican Republic and their nonverbal communication and how we can learn from that, and things that we should be aware of as we go about that, I found that it is very common to, when you meet in a business setting, to greet with a handshake. So, you greet and you say hello, and they prefer that you use the greetings in their language. So depending on the time of day, whether it's buenos dias, buenas tardes, so you greet with a handshake, say that, and one of the most important things when you meet someone in the Dominican Republic is to maintain eye contact, because that shows that you are engaged in the conversation. It shows that you are interested in what they have to say. So maintaining eye contact is huge, whereas in some cultures, that's offensive to maintain a high level of contact with someone up in the business world. But I found that in the Dominican Republic, they're a very family-oriented culture. And so for you to stand and look them in the eyes, that builds a level of trust, which is very important to them. The Dominicans are very comfortable with physical touch, and it's very standard. And so it's not uncommon to go down and meet someone from that culture and to be greeted with a kiss on the cheek. And I know for me personally in the United States, that's not something that happens very often. You don't walk around and people constantly greet you with kisses on the cheek. And I've had interactions with a Hispanic family that is just standard for them, and it caught me off guard the first time that I met them, because everybody greeted me with a hug and a kiss on the cheek, and it was just something that I was not prepared for, and so it put me in an uncomfortable position because I kind of didn't know how to respond. So it showed me the importance of knowing cultures before you engage with them, because you're going to be put in positions where things might get uncomfortable, or you do something that makes them uncomfortable, and you want to avoid that as much as possible with your high level of cultural intelligence. So they are very willing to touch, and I found in my research that they even view Americans as cold people often, because we are so uncomfortable with touch, and that's not something that's standard for us. And so you want to avoid that when dealing with them as much as possible. You want to get on their level. You want to get in there and do something that shows that you are engaged in their culture and what is standard for them. So hugs, kisses on the cheek, handshake, those are all wonderful things in the Dominican culture, and show that you understand, show that you care, they're very they have a very high standard for the level of trust. And so when you build that up, that shows that you are engaged with them, and they want that to show that you can do business together. So another thing that I found is that although they say that they are very timely and that they care about timing, it is very standard in this culture that people are late to almost everything. So whether it's a meeting, another event, or just like family things, it is very common to be late for those things. So not saying that you need to run around being late to everything to get on their level, but don't be offended when somebody in the Dominican culture shows up very late to one of your meetings that you set up with them, because that's something for them that is standard, that's normal, whereas for us it's not normal. So a couple of different things that I found on their nonverbal cues. I feel like there's a lot of undertones to that, but another thing that in my research that I found very interesting was that there are the different like facial expressions or hand gestures that for them are just very common and that they do all the time, but if you're not aware of that, you might become very confused in that setting. Or in our culture, those facial expressions are not the same. And so one of the things that I found is that often when the Dominican people like scrunch their nose and their eyebrows together, that shows that they are confused. So it's kind of like a uh-huh or a what. So they'll often be like, huh? But in our culture, when I saw that, my mind automatically jumps to a face of disgust. So it's just kind of like, ew, but for them, they're just like, I'm confused. Can you explain that in a different way? So that is something that you need to be aware of. For me, if someone did that to me, I'd be like, they are completely offended by everything that I just said, but that's not exactly how it is for them. Another thing that I found interesting is that they often pucker their lips in order to point at people. So that was just something that I think that if I saw them doing that, I would be completely caught off guard and totally confused by that. But for them, that's just a normal gesture. Also, they commonly like spin their fingers to say maybe later, I don't really have time right now, but can we talk about this later? So that's something that in the business setting that you should be aware of, because if they do that, it kind of gives you that cue to like, oh, we need to wrap this up because they have other things that they need to do. So there are the barriers of the misinterpretation of their timing that could cause trouble between Americans and Dominicans working together. There's barrier of personal space requirements because Americans are not as touchy-feely. They are not as, they have a very small, they like a lot of personal space, I guess that's the best way to put it. Whereas the Dominicans, they don't, and so that's not a standard, and so that could cause trouble with dealing with them in business settings, and also just body language. Those little signals that are found, all of those little things, those can cause issues with that. So we need to be aware of that so that we can deal with it. So those are a few things that I found about the Dominican Republic. I hope that those are helpful for you, and if you ever find yourself there, that that those things will assist you in dealing with them in a business setting. So thank you.